sugar, spice, and everything nice. These were the ingredients chosen to create the perfect little girl. But Professor Hexagon accidentally added an extra ingredient to the concoction: neoliberalism.
Yes, can you just move a little bit to the left, please, darling? Wonderful, and a little bit to the right. Even better. Wait a minute, darling. You look quite young. How old are you again? It's your 18th birthday? Even better. Smile.
It's no secret that we British have a subtle grudge against our American brethren, as the way they have managed to completely take our place as the world hegemon over the last century is truly the stuff of magic. Being a Brit in the 21st century is kind of like having a younger brother who grows up to become bigger than you, cooler than you, and richer than you, while you're just stuck there remembering the good old days. Americans will never understand the burning anger that is caused upon browsing a language select menu, only to see an American flag next to the word English. But if I had to pick one thing I've always admired about the Americans, it's how they've managed to completely dominate the technology sector. As whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Amazon, you name it, it is almost guaranteed to be an American company. Not that such companies have any loyalty to the American people, mind, but nevertheless. Many years ago, I put my hands together and prayed to the Almighty that the UK would one day have its own big tech website that not even the Americans could compete with. Unfortunately for me, however, my wish would be granted. OnlyFans. Be careful what you wish for. Now look, I've lectured us blokes about the consumption of adult material and how unhealthy it can be, but to play devil's advocate, for every Kuma, there's a creator, and OnlyFans is their lure. But what is OnlyFans? Well, let's see how they describe themselves. OnlyFans is the social platform revolutionising creator and fan connections. The site is inclusive of artists and content creators from all genres and allows them to monetize their content while developing authentic relationships with their fan base. Yeah, that's one way to put it. In reality, of course, OnlyFans is a website where people, usually young ladies, sell, shall we say, photographs of themselves. A website that even just 10 years ago would have been seen as borderline universally repugnant, yet today has sadly been normalised, as the modern neoliberal West continues its rapid decline into decadence. Of course, it should not exactly be surprising to hear that I, as a religious man, disapprove of OnlyFans, to put it mildly. Hell, even most people who use OnlyFans don't try to make an argument that it's a good thing for society, usually openly admitting that the only reason they approve of it is because, if they're a man, they're an animal who wants to see pretty pictures, and if they're a woman, they're shameless and just want to make money. It's rampant individualism, instant gratification, and short-term gains for long-term pains. All of the hallmarks of the modern neoliberal West, plain and simple. But here's the thing. It would be oh so very easy for me to create a half-an-hour-long rant talking about why OnlyFans is the devil, but honestly, I'd be preaching to the choir. Whenever I make a production, I want it to be enjoyable for everyone to watch, but I always secretly have a target audience that I especially want to see it. Don't be a Kuma? Guys who are Kumas. Conquering your childhood? People who had messed up childhoods. Why atheism is doomed? Well, atheists, obviously. And the reason for this is because I genuinely want to change people's minds. The number one thing that I despise about the internet today is that people put themselves in these artificial echo chambers, surrounding themselves exclusively with others who are just like them, foolishly believing that they have all the answers, rather than listening to alternative views that could challenge and thus improve them. And yes, I'm talking about Reddit. But if you really want to challenge people, then you're also going to have to understand how it is that they think. And if I'm going to make a production on why OnlyFans isn't worth it, then I suppose that the target audience of such a production would actually be people who are thinking of starting an OnlyFans. Which is, needless to say, not exactly a demographic that I can easily relate to. However, unlike my neoliberal rivals, who love to bury their heads in the sand, I for one have no problem with reaching out and talking to others who aren't like myself. I really wanted to talk to someone who had used OnlyFans to make money from OnlyFans so that I could see it all from their perspective. A friend of mine by the name of Screech told me about this unusual app called Kick, whereby people apparently live stream themselves to random strangers. According to him, 9 times out of 10, such streamers were women, who were on OnlyFans and merely using Kick as a means of advertisement in order to gather more Kumas to their wares. I asked him to scour the app far and wide and try to get one of these ladies to agree to be interviewed for our radio show. And after just a few minutes, we had found someone willing. Now obviously, as they talk to us about very personal experiences, I shan't be revealing who this person is specifically, but for the purposes of this production, we'll call them Anya, a 19-year-old woman from the United States.
We want to know, essentially, for a piece that we're doing, what is going on behind the scenes, because we only see it from the streaming side, right? Whereas you actually do it, and so yeah, you don't have to, but it would be fascinating.
No, that's cool. I'm just thinking of where to start.
One of the first things I wanted to ask Anya was, of course, the obvious. How did they get involved in all this in the first place?
Would you give the story from start to finish of how you, heard about this, your experiences in it?
You know, OnlyFans, especially 2021, it was a huge thing. Bella Thorne and all that were doing and everything. And I kind of saw it on TikTok. I knew about OnlyFans. And honestly, if you were 13 and above, you probably knew about OnlyFans just because it was such a big thing. It was talked about a lot. And so at 18, I was like, screw it, I'm gonna jump into this, just see what kind of happens.
Hang on a moment. Did I hear that right? Quote, if you were 13 or above, then you probably knew about OnlyFans. End quote. Probably one of the most disturbing things I've ever heard in my life. By her own admission, she had got the idea to start an OnlyFans account before she was even an adult by being inspired on TikTok.
Who introduced you to it again?
No one really. It was kind of it was a big thing, back then for, Bella Thorne and, everyone on TikTok and everything like that. So I kind of just saw it and just went with it.
Okay, so you found it on TikTok and then you went, well, I can do that and make money, and so you rolled with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not to sound like a broken record, folks, but I've said it once, and I'll say it again. Allowing children and teenagers to have unrestricted access to social media sites is without any shadow of a doubt the biggest disaster in parenting since the dawn of the 21st century. As when children are being inspired into digital prostitution, you know something's gone terribly wrong with your society.
Did you start this as soon as you turned 18, on the money? I don't mean on the birthday, but right after.
Yeah, on the money.
So actually on the birthday?
I had to go through the whole sign-up process, so it took a couple days, but sure, yeah. I started taking a look at it on my birthday.
This got me thinking. I wonder what's changed about Western society in recent decades that makes both mothers and fathers neglect their children, leading to such bad influences. I wonder if it has anything to do with the fact that today, both the average man and woman are now forced to constantly work in tandem just to make ends meet, which makes them absolutely exhausted. I wonder what sociological movement has caused such a destruction of the family unit on both a social and economic level. I wonder. But hey, come on, let's relax a bit here. Anya is, after all, an outlier. It's not like this is commonplace, right?
How many other people do you know who do this?
I knew a girl who did it, but she doesn't do it anymore, and then, and I know 2 people who live near me who do it.
Okay, never mind. Over here in the UK, a British Broadcasting Corporation investigation found that a 14-year-old girl had once used her grandmother's passport to sign up to an account on OnlyFans. Over in the US, a bipartisan coalition pressured the Department of Justice to investigate OnlyFans due to an increasing amount of reports by law enforcement agencies over concerns that images of minors were being sold on there. And in Canada, the executive director of the Canadian Centre for Child Protection described OnlyFans' efforts to protect the underage as minimal. I can't help but get the impression that all across the Western world there is a rising phenomenon of young girls attempting to prostitute themselves on the site.
You were aware of some people that were underage also doing it, or at least trying to?
Oh, I mentioned, Twitter accounts. I've seen, Twitter accounts of girls being 17, a month before their birthday, trying to get pre-fans, pre-followers, so when they turn 18, they can immediately release that OnlyFans and immediately have a, following and stuff. Which, not okay. Because like I said, I mentioned that, I was thinking about it, before I turned 18. But, to, make an account and try to put actions towards that, it's just really, really weird to me.
And as if that wasn't disturbing enough, some of the men who use OnlyFans don't actually seem to mind.
And, people are like, oh, I wish I was your father, I wish you were my 12-year-old daughter, and, they're like, oh, no, I get comments all the time, oh, I wish you were younger, I wish you were 12 or 13, all that kind of stuff.
So you get a lot of paedophiles from talking to you?
Oh, yes.
Would you say that's because you look young? So they go for you?
Yeah, I definitely do look young. I'm sure that's why people might gravitate towards me, those pedophiles and everything. I see that comment, on girls who are 30 still wishing they were younger and stuff.
You say that like it's so common. Is that actually as common as...
Every time I go kick live, I probably get a comment about wishing I was younger, or really, weird, inappropriate comments, and just a lot of pedophiles, a lot of that stuff. It's almost an everyday basis that I might run into one of those.
When I say that overexposure to adult material turns men into monsters, many a time am I mocked as if I'm over-exaggerating. Yet the proof is in the pudding. The kind of men who use such websites are evidently most perverted, and the logical conclusion of such perversion is equally perverted desires. And this really got me thinking. 2 of the world's biggest payment processors, Visa and MasterCard, can be freely used to make financial transactions on OnlyFans. But meanwhile, when you go to these companies' websites, they talk about how they have governance and ethics, and how they have values such as trust, partnership, agility, and initiative. They make great declarations, such as saying, "We stand against racism," and "We support small businesses." But yet, at the end of the day, have no qualms whatsoever allowing OnlyFans to become a multi-billion-dollar business. Not that this should be much of a surprise, as after all, such payment processors have also had no problem with supporting online gambling for the last 20 years either. But they do draw the line at allowing donations to Julian Assange's WikiLeaks after revealing damning facts about the US government's dirty business. Guided by our mission, vision, and values. And what are those exactly? facilitating the financial transactions of online prostitution sites known to be frequented by children, as well as online gambling, which is known to ruin lives, while at the same time actively protecting corrupt agents of the US government and hiding behind social justice topics that are highly popular, so the public at large don't talk about it? The irony is truly palpable. As if your companies truly had any values, you'd cut the cord to such decadence once and for all.
What do you think of the men who use your services?
Oh, I love them. They're great.
Alright, now what's the real answer?
Well, okay, not all of them are bad. There are a few that I could go without, but I mean, they're paying my bills, aren't they?
That's a very politically correct answer. That's a politician's answer. You should be a politician.
Which brings us on to the main point here. Money. A lot of these girls may have been inspired by people on TikTok, but the primary motivator behind why they join OnlyFans is clearly in the pursuit of wealth.
I think it's a recognized, easiest way to make money when you turn 18.
There's this common idea that OnlyFans is a relatively quick and easy means to get financial freedom, a narrative that is constantly pushed via advertisements, as well as tabloid media stories that speak of how vastly wealthy some people can get from the site. But is this really as easy as people think? OnlyFans even has this page on their site whereby they have two factors that one can interact with: followers and monthly subscription price, which are then used to simulate earnings. By default, I can't help but notice that they've set it at a very unrealistic 10,000 followers, who a fraction of which would pay a staggering $15 per month. Which, indeed, would make such a creator many thousands of dollars. But when set to the much more realistic minimum of 1,000 followers, with a fraction paying $5 per month, all of a sudden, the profits are remarkably uninspiring. Surely OnlyFans haven't made this page to allure people in via illusions of grandeur, right? I would never make such an accusation. So how much money can the average person really expect to make on OnlyFans? Well, OnlyFans officially says that they have over 1.5 million creators, of which over $5 billion is paid out annually. Sounds impressive. But if we actually crunch those numbers, that comes out to just $3,333 to each creator per year, which is around less than 10% of the American annual average. Yikes. But this is even worse when you realise that the average creator on OnlyFans won't even get that, as all we've done here is divide the total number of profits by the total number of creators. But of course, not everyone has equal profits, so in reality, this number is almost guaranteed to be even smaller, and by a large margin. But how much smaller could it possibly get? I managed to find an online forum called OnlyFans Advice, whereby, as its name implies, people go for OnlyFans advice. On this forum, a poll was conducted, which asked a very simple question. How much money do you make per month on OnlyFans? 51% of people said they made less than $500. 15% of people said they made between $500 and $1,000. 13% of people said between $1,000 and $2,000. 9% of people said between $2,000 and $4,000, with 13% saying over $4,000. Now, considering that the average monthly income in the United States is around $4,000 per month, that means that 87% of OnlyFans creators are earning less than said average, which somewhat correlates with our manual calculation from earlier. But what about our friend Anya? How much is she making? Well, let's ask.
How much money have you made since you started?
Here, let me pull some things up.
Have you got a PowerPoint?
No, I don't get a PowerPoint, but I can look at my statistics.
Okay.
Let's just say more than 5,000 or 6,000.
And how long have you been doing it for again? About a year?
Yeah, I started, when I turned 18 back in, what year is it? 2021?
roughly $5,000 to $6,000. Well, let's meet in the middle and say $5,500 total. Considering Anya had started OnlyFans 1.5 years ago, that means that they've made an average of just $305 per month, or $76 per week, or $10 per day, or 45 cents per hour. For reference, being a McDonald's fry cook, a job that is often mocked by many, pays over 10 times as much as that. With the big difference being, however, that they don't have to put their Big Macs on full display. I'm not gonna lie to you folks, this made me really upset. Imagine being a 19-year-old girl with your entire life ahead of you, and yet littered throughout the internet are photographs of you in absolutely vulgar states for the whole world to see. All for 45 cents an hour. I mean seriously, not even making any religious or political arguments, just from a purely pragmatic business perspective. Ladies, unless you look as hot as me, it ain't gonna be worth it.
I think also people assume that it's really easy money. So I think that's why you see a lot of people doing it. But you'll see that when they do it, a lot of people won't do it for more than a couple months.
But why do you think they quit after a few months? Are they just sick of the people, or is it just harder than they thought it would be?
Yeah, I think it's harder than they thought it would be. And no, it is not easy money. I know people who've been, doing OnlyFans for 2 years and can hardly get over 20 subscribers at a time, and I'm averaging like 100. And, it's not all easy for everybody. And, I think people realize that, like, just because like you have a pussy or, things like that, it's not immediately gonna sell. So I think people might get into it because they think it is. I've seen people who, got something going and they don't do well either.
Pursuing such a path can also lead to numerous potential negative consequences in the future, such as losing other more respectable job opportunities, losing access to high-quality men, and possibly even being the victim of blackmail. And that's just scratching the surface. Usually it would be the parents' job to teach their daughters the dangers of such acts, but it seems that many these days just can't be bothered.
There's the constant question of do my parents know? And like, did I tell them? I didn't tell them, but they do know. I don't think they know that I'm continuing to do it, because my father, of course, wanted me to stop, and, I was like, it's none of your goddamn business. And he's like, okay. But then they thought I stopped. But like, I started back again after a break.
Did your mother respond the same way, or just your father?
My father was a little bit more like assy about it, but like my mom, she was just like, why?
Were your folks quite progressive or conservative, would you say?
They're more progressive than conservative.
Yeah.
Let's just say if I found out that my daughter was on OnlyFans, I'd have some choice words. But the truth is that we in the West have really just stopped caring as a society. I came across this post on another forum known as Ask an American, whereby someone asked, "What are your thoughts on the rise and popularity of OnlyFans?" And the answers absolutely horrified me. "Indifferent. Not something I'm paying for or trying to earn a living at, but it's not hurting me either. Have fun, OnlyFans creators and consumers. It's not something I would spend a dime on, but apparently it's an incredibly lucrative opportunity. To anyone who does it, I say, seize the day. Capitalism rocks!" And this mindset, ladies and gentlemen, showcases everything wrong with the Western world today. Yeah, I wouldn't buy naked photos of 19-year-old girls, but I fully support your right to do so. Pathetic! Why have we become such a soulless society that only seems to care about money? Whenever there are tales of women degrading themselves via disgraceful websites such as OnlyFans, the most common default reaction I hear is, well, good on them. Good on them. That's your daughters, your sisters, your cousins that you're talking about, not products to be bought and sold. The truth is that the majority of people in the Western world today are absolute individualistic slimes, who could not care less about their collective society at large. This is even true amongst those who dare call themselves conservatives. Because God forbid that conservatives would actually have to grow a spine and, actually conserve something.
Well, you see, conservatism isn't about telling people how to live their life. No. It's about freedom.
Wrong! Social conservatism is about enforcing a collective morality of strict rules, usually based on a religious principle that ensures that the society is just, orderly, and decent. Yet many conservatives, particularly those in the United States, have instead started fooling themselves into thinking that the promotion of individual freedom, rather than collective morality, is justified, and thus have abandoned social conservatism for social progressivism, becoming individualist enablers of sin. Only fools fall for that attempted redefinition. It's so amusing to me how the Western world looks at the Islamic world and has the audacity to call it anti-woman. Yet I can't imagine that Muslim men would just sit back and watch their women deface themselves in such a way. Charles, you didn't tell me. Maybe you're not bad after all. I often talk a lot about this crisis of masculinity, the idea that men aren't in a good spot right now due to the fact that the modern era has robbed us of so much. But good lord, when I look at how little sense of self-worth that many Western women now have in themselves, it makes me think that perhaps the grass isn't greener on the other side. Women throughout history were like,
Alright, listen up, boy. If you even want to see my thigh, then you've got to 1. Buy me an expensive ring. 2. Sign a financial contract that binds you to me for the rest of your life. 3. Work every day and give me all of your earnings. 4. Ensure that I and our offspring will always have stable shelter. Oh, and 5. I want a cute dog as well. And the guys were just like, yes, honey. Meanwhile, women today are like, I'll show you my ass for $5. What happened?
I really hated my body and really had a lot of self-confidence issues and everything. And doing this more honestly gave me more confidence, gave me more comfortability in my body, and makes me it makes me feel prettier and made me I'm a little bit better at makeup. I'm better at talking to people. I'm better just at a lot of things. I don't know if that's right. I'm a little nervous.
No. Would you say it increases your charisma? In a way, you're better at talking with people and dealing with people.
Yeah.
He's doing it, yeah.
Yeah, it gives me confidence.
There's an unbelievable irony how over 60 years after the implementation of feminism, a movement that was supposedly meant to give women respect and independence, has actually ended up crafting a society whereby women being turned into objects and becoming dependent on men who use them is not shunned, but on the contrary, celebrated. As I've said in the past, before the 1960s, one man's wage in even the most mundane of jobs could pay for him, his wife, and multiple children to have a house, car, and other amenities with absolute ease. Today, however, one man's wage and one woman's wage can barely pay for themselves. Now, hardly anyone can afford a house, car, or even food in some cases. The Western world, on paper, is richer than ever before, yet the average person's living conditions deteriorate by the year. Stagnating wages caused directly by the sudden doubling of the workforce, and now the rich only get richer and the poor only get poorer. And as it's well documented throughout history that in times of economic hardship, interest in providing prostitution services skyrockets, then it shouldn't exactly be surprising to see this so commonly today either. Of course, the objectification and commodification of women was the logical end result of a feminist society. Because when you have a movement that murders the family unit and calls it oppressive, a movement that tells you that individuality is the most important thing one can have, and a movement that demonizes men so much that they end up not caring if you become an object, but on the contrary, may even applaud it, then what exactly does one expect to happen? It's almost as if feminism was never really about the so-called empowerment of women, but merely celebrating working you to the bone to generate capital. That's why neoliberals promote you specifically in academia. That's why neoliberals charm you specifically in the media. And that's why neoliberals praise you specifically for being individualistic. The modern neoliberal mantra doesn't care about you, but only how much it can make from you. You have been fooled to think you have been liberated, when in reality, you have been enslaved. In the last 40 years alone, the amount of women going to prison in the United States has increased by 700%. Women today are more depressed, stressed, and saddened than ever. And of course, the main point of this production, many young women and even girls are now turning themselves into objects voluntarily for mere scraps of cash. Even the very concept of womanhood has been deconstructed completely, today treated by the cowardly masses as a vague metaphor that could mean anything. Even your very existence is now questioned. Liberation, ladies and gentlemen. For all the talk that feminists do about the past, the so-called patriarchy and how supposedly oppressive it was, I can't imagine what kind of mental gymnastics one would have to do to prefer this to then. The truth is that our society was never intended to be individualistic and lonely, but collectivistic and familial. And women, on the contrary to being oppressed, played an unbelievably important role in that framework. A role that society needs now more than ever. Remember this guy from earlier? In the past, when prostitution was always a physical exchange rather than a virtual one, there were men known as pimps. And what these pimps would do is sell out prostitutes to men in order to take a slice of their earnings. And if you really think about it, OnlyFans as a company is perhaps the most successful pimp of all time. Taking a 20% commission fee from all their users, they have managed to make billions from virtual pimping without even having to interact with them directly. And society cheers them on. Now, in my not so humble opinion, there's one very simple way to deal with such prostitutes and pimps. To make it absolutely haram. Did you know that an investigation by Forbes found that the owner of OnlyFans used to advertise the fact that he had access to illegal adult material sites that were advertised as featuring underage performers? Now, there's no evidence to suggest that any of his sites actually contain such material mined, but nevertheless, the fact that he even used to advertise such goods gives an interesting impression into who he seemingly believes such websites cater to the most. The truth is that a civilized society does not tolerate this kind of decadence. Freedom is not the most important virtue of Western society, but morality. All forms of pimping should be eradicated, as well as all attempts to prostitute oneself. End of story. I must ask the few progressive ideologues watching this. Is this the utopian society that you envisioned in your dreams? A world where men who advertise illicit material become billionaires? A world where young girls are inspired into prostitution? A world where men become cold and animalistic? Because where I'm sitting, your utopia looks very much like a dystopia. The progressives truly are naught more than useful idiots to the neoliberals who play them like a fiddle. Of course, there will always be some people who, no matter how many facts, statistics, or truths you tell them, simply lack critical thinking skills and are incapable of righteous conduct. Clinging on to the dream of feminism, convinced that their mythos ideology of lies is progress, and that anyone who dares criticize it is simply stuck in the past. But little do they realise that they will soon be the past themselves, as this broken, rotting civilization is about to reach its sell-by date, and a new era is dawning that very few people currently have the wisdom to see coming. Because as the old quote goes, traditions are solutions to problems long forgotten. The neoliberals and their servants are obsessed with the idea of voting, working, and saving. And yet, despite all this, as they do not breed, they are certain to have no legacy. Their additions to the world will fade almost instantly, an existence entirely unfulfilled. Misery is their destination, both in this life and the next. On the other hand, however, the wise men and women who reject the current decaying neoliberal establishment will be rewarded most generously, the inheritors of a civilization that forgot even the most basic fundamentals. Thus, much like how we must have huge respect for the rising numbers of men who have correctly identified that the consumption of adult material is bad for them, we must likewise have much respect for the rising numbers of women who have identified that this failed experiment of modernity has done nothing more than to debase them. So let this production be a warning. A warning into just how dangerous the internet can be at inspiring young women into questionable actions. A warning into just how little profits are actually made from such acts. And a warning into how our decadent neoliberal society gaslit us into getting here in the first place. Because make no mistake, time is on the side of the righteous. And history will look back on these times of decadence very, very harshly. Alright folks, I hope you enjoyed that. I really want to give a thanks to the woman who we refer to as Anya for that little interview there. It was from a couple of months back. Those of you who are on the Discord server and listen to Hex Radio every Saturday might remember it. Went on for like 2 hours. It was like a 2-hour conversation. I had to just cut it down and take like the best 10-15 minutes of it or so. But yeah, to be honest with you, a lot of what we spoke about was too depressing for YouTube. You know, I couldn't, you know, it was just too saddening. But hey, perhaps the perfect place to talk about it on the Patreon exclusive podcast. Oh, sorry, not exclusive, Hexclusive. As soon as this is up, I'll be reading your comments as ever, and yeah, talking about it more in depth, because man, this was a depressing one to make. I'm not gonna lie to you folks, like Jesus Christ. Again, it's just another byproduct of individualism. To the people who look at themselves in the mirror and say that they're an individualist over a collectivist, I honestly don't know what planet you're on, frankly. I mean, how can you not look around at the state of our despondent, dying civilization and actually say to yourself, yeah, we're on the right track? I mean, young girls prostituting themselves online for pennies? For cents? Is this the future that you want for your own daughters? I don't think so. It's certainly not the future that I would want for mine. It's depressing. Nevertheless, I want to give a shout out to the Wall of Famers. I want to welcome John. John, hello. Welcome to you. And Octave120, welcome to you both to the Wall of Fame. Either way, folks, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.